Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you will consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and speech writing needs. I am delighted to be joined today by Yuri Kruman, who will be discussing how to help your employees to do their life's best work for you. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits as well as high-net-worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at pkcpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Yuri, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Bruce. It's great to see you.
It's my pleasure. Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to our viewers.
Sure. I'm Yuri Kruman. I do organizational development and HR consulting. My focus is primarily on fast growth startups. Could be in tech or could be non-tech. It really depends on the client. I'm also an executive coach. I write books, and there's a number of other projects I'm involved in, but those are the main ones.
All right. Well, one of the focuses of your work is millennials. And something has always interested me about millennials. Why is it that employers believe that they have to almost kowtow to millennials, that they have to meet the demands of millennials instead of millennials having to meet demands of the employer?
I'm glad you asked. I think the number is very simple. It's just a proportion of workers that are millennials, and that proportion is very high. It's above half now. So I think that alone is the main reason why employers, fortunately or unfortunately, is up to them, have to pay attention to the demographics. And that, especially in younger companies, that's just a fact of life. You have younger employees that have, in some ways, very different expectations. They have a very different mindset in some ways. And, that's just how it goes. If you want to bring on the best people and keep them a while, then you have to cater to their needs. And millennials are just, I think, much more vocal than previous generations about wanting certain things. I think that's the main difference.
I just want to point out, because it's clear that you're in your car, that you are not driving.
No, absolutely not.
Now, great answer. It's what I expected, obviously. How do you recommend, I'll ask it differently. What are the key criteria that millennials want in order to stay or to accept and stay at a position?
I think that the requirements are actually pretty straightforward. They may sound like it's, as part of some sort of entitlement program, but nevertheless, what millennials really want most, as I found from my research, actually from my book, which came out in February, which is called What Millennials Really Want from Work and Life, not surprisingly, is that they want growth. They want to have a clear path forward. So they want to understand how they're going to grow in their role, how this fits into their career. They want to make sure that they're aligned with the mission and vision of the company, and that the mission and vision of the company is aligned with their mission and vision. And that's why I would say that a lot of millennials are, I would say they're very bullish on the mission of their company, and they really want to work for a company that has a meaningful mission to them.
And how is this different from other employees?
I don't know that it's necessarily different from other employees. It's just that, again, millennials are more vocal about their demands, if you will, and they're also willing, based on labor market demographics, to move and to really not have or even pretend to have loyalty to companies, because that's just the nature of the labor market. You know, if you're someone who's very talented, you're going to be in great demand. You're going to have recruiters trailing you. You're going to have people reaching out on LinkedIn. So it's not the same. It's kind of like the gig is up, right? Companies used to pretend to be loyal to employees, and employees used to pretend to be loyal to companies, and those pretenses are largely gone, I think. And now employers in return are starting to realize, okay, in this very tight labor market where talent is very difficult to attract and retain, that's why we have to play this game. We have to be the first ones to kind of put up and shut up. And that's why things have really changed, I think, in the dynamic with millennials.
Well, loyalty means tenure. And you want your employees to stay as long as possible because you want to get a return on your investment. It's cost you time, it's cost you money in order to train them. And one of the things you mentioned was that millennials want to advance. Advancement, correct me if I'm wrong, really means moving up the ladder, which means managerial or supervisory roles. And that means supervising someone who is older than you are. Now, I lived in Israel for 13 years. I served in the Israeli army, and all of my direct officers, the lieutenants, captain, major, not the colonels, were younger than I am. The people who trained me how to use weapons were 18, 19 years old. I was 27 years old. I have no problems with reporting to someone who is younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who will object to that. And if it's a big company and somebody has been loyal for 15, 20 years and there's an opening, they want that opening. And if it goes to the millennial, then the company is going to lose the non-millennial employee who's been with them 15, 20 years. So how does this work? How do you manage the aspirations of millennials without losing key employees who really cannot be replaced, in the sense that if somebody's been with a company for 20 years, yeah, somebody else can do their job, but they won't have the history. They won't know the company.
So I think we have two conflicting forces here. One is, okay, tenure. I've been here long enough. That should mean something. Unfortunately, I think in this economy where I would say there's a big premium on up-to-date skills, tenure doesn't mean much, unfortunately, right? Because it's really about the value that you're adding to the company. Of course, part of that value is cultural, that you are part and parcel of the company and that you've been here a long time. And, the two forces seem to be in opposition, and companies unfortunately have to resolve that. So the simplest way for them to resolve that is to say, well, okay, certain skills add value. Either you have them or you don't. And if you don't have them, maybe you're not it's not even about millennial or not. It doesn't mean all millennials have the latest skills either. But whoever you are, if you don't get your skills updated and you're not able to deliver the same value for the company, then your tenure doesn't terribly matter. So the best way to resolve this is to make sure everyone has access to, let's say, courses, training, some way to update their skills, so that, if somebody's in the company for a long time and now that they have updated skills, that can be more valuable than someone who's younger and just has the tech skills. And so there are ways to resolve this, even though those two forces seem to be directly in opposition. But I want to go back to the beginning of your question, which I think I want to flip the script a little bit, right? In the sense that the focus should not necessarily be on keeping someone in your company forever or even for that long. Because the point is, if you really treat your people well, even if you let them go, maybe they'll come back later, but they will have had training and experience on someone else's dime, not on yours. Right? So there are very different ways, I think, this is what I discuss in my book, very different ways from the traditional to look at tenure. So instead of saying, okay, I have to have this person here for 5 years or else, the best work a person does, provided they're a good fit and they're able to hit their stride, is starting in around year 3 and 4. So let's say, for sake of argument, that the average millennial tenure, actually, if you look at the numbers, the average millennial tenure in companies is pretty much exactly the same as it was for Gen X and boomers in that stage of their career. So there's a lot of hype about millennials being flaky and leaving early. It's not warranted by the data. There's just no such thing there. So the point is, don't focus on exactly how long somebody's with you. Focus on making it their most productive and best work of their lives while they're with you. So yeah, of course, make sure they're around at least 2 to 3 years, but make their life, make their work life meaningful, give them the best experience possible, employee experience, and they'll do their life's best work for you. Again, provided it's a good fit in terms of skills, experience, and mindset. But all things being equal, it's not about tenure. It's about, beyond a certain point, it's just about getting the best value out of that worker by providing the best value for them at work.
Now, in my research, I have discovered that the least important component of I don't want to call it compensation, the least important component of an employee retention program is salary.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Beyond a certain point, it's not really about the salary. However, I also don't want to quite paint everyone with the same brush. If you live in New York or San Francisco, you definitely need a good market salary just to survive.
That is
You're
true.
not going to be able to, you can't rent something half decent within commuting distance. And the average commute, by the way, in New York and in San Fran is an hour each way. So it's not exactly great conditions to begin with. So yes, if you're in Kansas City, perhaps your wages are going to be a little bit less important than New York. But again, beyond a certain point, it isn't about wages. So just to put things in the right context. Based on what I've seen, it's certainly not just about the money. It's about the alignment of the company's mission with your own. You want to feel like you're doing something good for humanity through the channel which you're given from above. And you want to make sure you're growing in the role, that you have constant learning, you have feedback, you're able to become better as a professional and human. You want to work with people that are, intelligent and bright and also motivated by similar things. These things are not monetizable in pure salary terms, right? So those, really the way I look at it, what millennials really want isn't so terribly different from what anybody else wants. They just demand it more because they can't. That's where the culture has evolved, and that's where the labor market is. And also, one other difference, it's not all the same, not even close, is that millennials want things in a very different order from other generations. But also, part of that is because, millennials tend to be at a younger age range than the other generations are now. So it's kind of obvious that older people with kids and obligations are going to want different things, including to stay longer in a role, than people that are younger and more mobile. It's not exactly rocket science. So that's a few of my findings.
You made an interesting comment. I don't know if it was a slip of the tongue or not, but you said if you want to be a good professional human. Now, there are who knows how many books being written about the impact of artificial intelligence on the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Are millennials more receptive to working with non-human professionals, to use your term, than other generations?
AI is a big deal. If you take Elon Musk's view, then we're all going to be replaced by robots and run by them and all that good stuff. If you take Zuckerberg's view, maybe not quite so much. That robots are all going to be good helpers, and not just robots, obviously, but any form of artificial intelligence. So what I would say is that millennials are clearly concerned about AI because we know from all kinds of different studies and projections and listening to futurists that AI is probably going to replace at least 40% of jobs in the next decade, if not sooner. So that means that professional humans have to adjust, right? They have to either understand that AI will be a part of their actual job role. It will be helping them to do their job better, whether it's to read, scans, whether it's to make sense of data, to make predictions, etc. So in those senses, AI is a tremendous help. It's able to make decisions for humans much easier by taking away elements of bias. Right? On the other hand, it just means that you always have to watch your back and think about your job role. Is my job role easily automatable? Right? Meaning if I'm doing some kind of data analysis that can be performed dramatically faster and cheaper by, AI software, well, I probably need to adapt, and I need to adapt quickly because I probably will be replaced. So that's where the conversation about soft skills comes in. I don't know if you saw a study by Google of its own workers. This was about a year or two ago, where they looked at the most important success factors for employees to stay in the company and move up. And what they found was nowhere in the top 10 of those most important traits was anything about coding or math. All of them were soft skills, right? So when it comes to customer service, when it comes to employee experience, when it comes to account management, there's so many different elements where it's a human-to-human connection, and there's just really only so much you can do to replace that by building a robot or by having a chatbot. So anyway, very high-level, expensive professional services, for example, they still have to be delivered by humans for now. A lot of consulting will also go away because best practices will, by definition, come out of data. So all of us, whether we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're financiers, whether we work in tech, all of us have to think about this because the simple truth is that there will come a time within the next few years, maybe it's 3, 5, maybe 10, but not much more, where the predictive ability of AI will already kind of obviate the need for a lot of our work. So how we adjust, how companies adjust. Companies we know will adjust by cutting costs, by replacing, unreliable humans with their input errors with things that can do it more accurately. But the point is, all of us have to think about this. Where nobody is magically immune to this force. Does it mean that all of us will be replaced? No, not even close. But we do have to think about it.
There's an excellent book. We're just about out of time. There's an excellent book called AI Superpowers by a gentleman by the name of Lee, L-E-E. And he's focused on China and the United States. And it's very interesting, especially as regards China's theft of intellectual property and how they look at it not as theft, but as copying. But that's not the point I want to bring up. It's something that mirrors what you just said. This gentleman writes that it's not that jobs are going to be replaced in total. Some will, not all, but there are those that will be replaced only in part. And the best example is a diagnostician. The AI, the computer, will be able to say this person has cancer, this person has this disease or that disease. But the computer cannot deliver the news to the patient, and the computer cannot answer the patient's questions in an acceptable manner. So this goes back to what you were saying about soft skills, and this brings me back to my original question. If millennials are treated like they are entitled to everything, how is that going to impact their EQ and their soft skills? Will they have them?
It's a great question. I think that instead of worrying about the negative consequences, I think we should look at the positives. The positives of creating an atmosphere where someone is not afraid to voice their concerns because they have both anonymous and open ways of sharing their feedback, and a place where information flows more quickly because of just it's more open and it's faster. Those are all positives. And when someone is able to, demand career growth for their own personal needs, I don't necessarily think that's a net negative. I think it's a net positive because it means that people are able to gain more skills per unit time. They're able to work on projects where their best energy and best motivation come out because they speak openly about what they want in order to grow. I think those are all great positives. Now, whether or not that comes across as entitled or something else, it's almost beside the point. I think that the fluidity of a role, the fluidity of the labor market simply make those concerns irrelevant. I don't really think on a practical day-to-day basis, I hear anybody saying, "Oh, you entitled schmuck." If you have a millennial that isn't doing well, then they'll be called an entitled schmuck and removed. But if they're a key employee and they're really part of an integral part of the team, then it doesn't matter. They're delivering value. So if they're open about asking for something, well, that's fine. I'll give it to them, provided they're adding value.
I've been doing podcasts now for 8 years. I think you're the first person to swear in Yiddish on my show. And since it's Yiddish, it's okay.
What can I say?
It's it's just there have been some people who have almost slipped up, and it's funny that they always react in the same way of embarrassment because in a way it's a compliment because it means the guest is relaxed. But anyways, I just thought that was a cute thing to point out. We do have a few minutes left. What message do you have for employers? What do you want them to take away? If they could only watch the last few minutes of this podcast, what is it that you want them to know about how to get the best work out of their employees so that they will benefit? They, being the employer, will benefit.
Sure. I would say that the advice is the same as for any one-on-one coaching. It's that you should always operate not from a fixed mindset, meaning you think, oh my God, everything is scarce. It's not out of, well, what am I eligible for? It's kind of like, all right, well, if I remove the barriers, so let's say I'm not worried about money. It's a big if, but let's say, just hypothetical. If I have $1 billion to run my company, I can do it any which way. How do I do it? How do I make sure to treat my people super well if it's not about money? And what you find is that the best things in life are free. The simplest way to keep people around and keep them motivated is by saying thank you. It's by celebrating their small wins, by helping people to compliment each other to begin with within the company. That, hey, you made my life easier this week. Thanks a lot. Right? By showing that they matter. You think about, okay, you had a kid who was born. Let me send your wife flowers. Or, just very simple human things that don't necessarily cost a lot of money. That's the stuff that people value the most. So you're right. When you look at the best companies to work for, like my wife works for Estee Lauder, for example, right? Their salaries, they're a little bit below market. They're about 10% below market. And why is that? Is it because, they're so stingy and terrible? No, it's really one of the best companies to work for. And the way they've treated my wife and myself and our family has been nothing short of incredible. So when you breed that kind of human touch, even in a large company, it's possible, right? You can even find that it affects your bottom line very positively, because you don't have to pay people the same amount in salary, because you're not chasing people with that kind of mindset that it's all about the money, the money, the money. People want to work for a company that does something good for the world, that cares about them, that wants them to move forward, wants them to be better humans, not just better professionals. And the point is that even if your company is very small, even if you're only able to do certain small things, just take the time to care about your people and hire other people that care about people sincerely in a non-trivial way, not through short-term perks, not through some kind of foosball tables, but by really just working in a place that makes them feel valued, makes them feel like they're growing. And that's it. There's really nothing so magic here. It's pretty straightforward.
You mentioned fixed mindset, which, as I understand it, is a term of science, for lack of a better word, where the individual has their beliefs and they're not willing to change them, as opposed to a growth mindset where you're willing to learn and expand and consider other alternatives. Is that something that employers need to have?
Yes, absolutely. I think that there's no way forward. There's no way to find a common ground or the best way for everyone to not just get along, but to build a better and healthier and company is really through those means. It's by starting with better communication. It's about being clear what you want, how you want it, and then finding a common ground, not by saying it's my way or the highway, but saying, okay, we hire the best people, not to tell us what, not to tell them what to do, but so they can tell us what to do. Right? So that's one of those maxims that sounds lovely on the wall, on a plaque, because Steve Jobs said it, but it's much harder to put into practice. And what I do in my work for consulting companies around their HR practices is that this is the thing that's hardest for entrepreneurs to grasp, because this is my baby. I built it, and this is it's all about my way or the highway. Otherwise, it's going to fall apart. You have to move on. You have to level up. When your company grows, you have to become a better leader. And the best leaders empower others to be leaders, not followers. Right? And that's the most important and the most difficult thing to learn for entrepreneurs, but they have to do it. Otherwise, they'll be obsolete.
And what I tell my HR clients, employers looking to hire, is you always want to hire someone smarter than you are. Otherwise, you're going to be spending your time micromanaging.
You got it. Exactly.
Uri, thank you so much. I'm going to share a slide here with your contact information. I appreciate your coming on. I'm sure that our viewers found your insights worthwhile. Any final thoughts?
First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on, Bruce. It's really a pleasure to speak with you. It's very much a pleasure always, every time we get to speak. I just want to, leave your viewers with a very simple thought. Millennials or Gen Zs, we're all really humans, right? We might have a little bit different areas where we have trauma, right? Older millennials went through the recession. Gen Z had to go through, all these school shootings. All of us are human in the end, right? If you want to get the best out of people, you have to treat people well, but not just well in a vague sense, well in the way that they want to be treated. And that's really the secret of how to build a great organization.
Yuri, thank you so much. I appreciate your coming on. I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching. And as always, please keep focused on success.